gather around the glowing hearth of the holiday season, when the streets are adorned with lights and the air is saturated with the scent of warmth and tradition, something else awakens, something less visible, something buried deep within you. You may believe that holidays are simply times of joy, fellowship, and memory, but within the collective psyche, there are also seasons of invocation. They resurrect that which you thought you had laid to rest. They call forth the shadow you have buried. The shadow is not annihilated by repression. It is merely sent into exile, waiting for the season when memory, ritual, and collective archetype will open the gates for its return. Have you ever noticed how during holidays old tensions resurface? Arguments ignite around the table, childhood wounds bleed again beneath adult skins. You may feel the weight of nostalgia, the ache of loneliness, even when surrounded by family, or the strange bitterness that creeps into what is supposed to be a festival of joy. This is no accident. It is the archetypal law of the unconscious asserting itself through ritual time. Holidays are not merely dates on a calendar. They are thresholds, psychic portals, where time folds upon itself. In the unconscious, there is no linear chronology. The child you once were still lives there, untouched by the years, still waiting for recognition, still bearing the injuries and longings you refuse to face. And during holidays, when collective ritual compels you to return to the hearth, the unconscious seizes its chance, the child stirs, the shadow rises. Let us speak of the shadow not as a mere concept of negativity, but as the living reservoir of what you could not accept in yourself. It contains both the darkness of your repressed instincts and the brilliance of your unlived life. The shadow is not evil, though it can become destructive when ignored. It is the unacknowledged, the hidden, the part of the soul that does not obey the polite order of the ego. And during holidays, the rituals of gathering, of gift-giving, of remembering, of returning to the family system, act as invocations that summon this shadow to the surface. You must not be surprised that what you thought forgotten re-emerges. The psyche is circular, not linear. It does not discard. It recycles. The same conflicts, the same wounds, the same unspoken griefs reappear as if they had never been resolved, because, in truth, they were not. You can silence them during the year with busyness, with distractions, with ambition and noise, but when the cycle of the year brings you to the stillness of ritual, when you step into the ancestral archetype of holiday, you also step into the temple of memory, and in that temple, shadows come to life. Consider the myth of resurrection itself, present in many traditions. The God who dies and returns, the light that fades and re-emerges, the ancestors who visit once more. Holidays are shadows of these myths. When you celebrate, you are not only engaging in social festivity, but also reenacting ancient dramas embedded in the collective unconscious. And in the reenactment, what was buried is invited to rise. This is why you feel the strange heaviness during times of supposed celebration. You are not merely contending with the present. You are standing at the intersection of your entire psychic history. Perhaps you feel it when an old resentment toward a parent boils up as you share a meal, or when the loneliness of your childhood returns as you sit amid laughter. Perhaps you dream of winters past, of houses you once knew, of figures who no longer walk the earth but who visit you in the unconscious. The dream during holidays becomes thick with archetypal energy. Pay attention, for these dreams are not trivial. They are messages from the shadow carrying truths you have not integrated. Do you see the paradox? The holiday, which the ego insists must be light, here, and perfection, becomes the very theater in which the unconscious stages its dramas of darkness. And yet, this is no curse. It is an invitation. The shadow emerges not to destroy you, but to demand recognition. It wants to be seen at last. The more you deny its presence, the more it sabotages your joy, twisting your gatherings into scenes of conflict or melancholia. But if you welcome its voice, you will find in its darkness the seed of new life. Let me tell you, the shadow resurrected during holidays is not random. It is the child self who waits for you at the threshold. The unmet needs, the unspoken grief, the desire for belonging, the rage at abandonment, all are alive within you, hidden beneath the mask of holiday cheer. To encounter the shadow is to meet this child again. Can you sit with it, even as the world demands festivity? Can you listen to the cry that emerges behind the laughter? Many of you try to avoid this encounter. You drink, you consume, you distract yourself with the superficial glitter of the season, but the unconscious is not fooled. You cannot drown the child within you with wine, nor silence it with gifts. It will speak, if not in your waking life, then in your dreams, your anxieties, your sudden outbursts. To meet the holiday season consciously is to meet the resurrection of the shadow consciously. Notice how traditions repeat. Notice how families return to the same dynamics, the same conflicts. Why? Because the archetype demands repetition until integration occurs. Holidays are repetitions of the ancient cycle of death and rebirth. And your psyche, bound to these archetypal rhythms, repeats its own dramas until you dare to face them. You may ask, what shall I do when the shadow rises at my holiday table? Shall I fight it? Repress it once more? No, that is the old mistake. The root of neurosis, instead, you must greet it as an old guest. Acknowledge its presence. When the bitterness rises, instead of lashing out or denying it, recognize it. Ah, here is the shadow I buried. When the grief comes, do not suffocate it with false cheer. Allow it to breathe. Give it space. This does not mean collapsing into despair in front of others, but silently, inwardly, recognizing, this is my truth. In recognition lies integration. Think of the myth of Christ, whose birth is celebrated during Christmas in the West. It is the image of divine light born into a dark, cold world. But do not overlook that before this birth there was the long silence of Advent, the shadowed waiting, the recognition of humanity's need. Every light emerges from darkness. Every savior is born from the womb of shadow. In psychological terms, your renewal, your capacity for wholeness, is born precisely when you allow the darkness of the unconscious to speak. The holiday is thus a reminder light and shadow dance together. To celebrate only light is to fall into illusion. I warn you, then, not to enter the season unprepared, for if you do, the unconscious will prepare its ambushes. A careless remark from a sibling will ignite years of unresolved anger. A missing presence at the table will open a wound of grief you thought had closed. A simple ritual will awaken memories you thought extinguished. The holidays resurrect not only joy but also sorrow, not only laughter but also pain. And this is necessary, for without encountering the shadow, you cannot enter true renewal. Understand that the psyche uses ritual time as a vessel, just as ancient peoples knew that solstice was a time of transition, when the sun seemed to die and return. So too does your unconscious know that holidays are thresholds. It brings forth that which you could not face in ordinary time. It is a sacred theater. To walk through it blindly is to repeat the cycle endlessly. To walk through it consciously is to integrate the shadow into your being, transforming what once haunted you into an ally. I ask you, when the shadow resurrects this holiday, will you flee or will you meet it? For the one who dares to meet it finds that the holiday is not merely a social festivity, but a psychic initiation. The family gathering becomes an alchemical vessel. The conflicts become mirrors. The grief becomes the doorway to compassion. The shadow, once integrated, reveals its hidden treasure, the energy, vitality, and creativity that were locked away. In this way, holidays are not curses, but opportunities. Not traps, but thresholds to individuation. So when you feel the strangeness of this season, do not call yourself broken. Call yourself summoned. The unconscious is speaking. The archetypes are alive. The child you buried is alive. The shadow you feared is alive. And life is true life, is never without darkness. You may wonder why, when the holiday season approaches, the unconscious insists upon its ritual of resurrection. It is because the collective and personal psyche are bound together in ways you scarcely realize. You do not celebrate alone. Even when you sit in solitude, you are swept into a tide of ancestral patterns, of archetypal energies that rise at the same time each year. The return of light in the darkness, the gathering around fire and table, the exchange of gifts, all of these are not inventions of your generation, but echoes of ancient rites. And when the archetypes awaken, they awaken not only in society but in you. They stir your deepest layers, stirring also the shadow you hope to silence. The shadow rises most insistently when you resist it. Picture the image of the banquet table. The family gathers. Laughter fills the room, but somewhere inside, a voice whispers, "This is false." You sense the artificiality of the cheer. You feel the suppressed grievances pressing beneath the surface of every smile. This is the presence of the shadow. It is the uninvited guest who always sits at the table. You may pretend not to see it, but you feel its weight. And the unconscious is relentless. It will not allow the lie of pure harmony to go unchallenged. Where there's light proclaimed, shadow will appear. Think of the dream life that flourishes at this time of year. Dreams intensify because the unconscious finds its gateway open. Perhaps you dream of snow, of forgotten relatives, of houses filled with rooms you had forgotten, of dead figures returning to speak to you. These are not random images. They are the psyche's way of reminding you that you live in two worlds, the outer world of festivity and the inner world of unintegrated memory. The dream confronts you with what you try to exclude. It insists that you reckon with the totality of your being, not just the part you have polished for display. You may think the shadow that rises during holidays is only negative, but remember, it holds both darkness and gold. The rage that resurfaces may conceal your unlived strength. The grief that returns may reveal your capacity for authentic compassion. The loneliness you feel at the crowded table may whisper that your true path lies elsewhere, beyond the conformity of the clan. Thus, what feels like suffering is often the call of individuation. The shadow brings back not only wounds, but the possibility of wholeness. Many of you have tried to kill your shadow, but the psyche does not permit murder. The psyche permits only transformation. The resurrection you experience during holidays is a psychic necessity. It is the return of the repressed, demanding its place in the whole of your being. You must not treat it as an enemy, but as a prophet. Its voice, though disguised in bitterness or sorrow, speaks of what you have neglected. If you can listen without judgment, you will discover that it tells you the truth about yourself, a truth that no holiday cheer can silence. Think of the figure of the ghost, so often woven into winter tales, the ghost of Christmas past, the spirits that visit in the night, the ancestors who return. These are not mere literary inventions, but psychic realities. Ghosts represent precisely that which was not laid to rest, that which still haunts. The holidays thin the veil between conscious and unconscious, between present and past. That is why ghosts visit you, not always literally in vision, but in the haunting of your moods, the return of forgotten conflicts, the sudden ache of memory. Do not dismiss these hauntings. They are your teachers. I warn you, when you flee from these hauntings, they intensify. When you deny your grief, it leaks as irritability. When you deny your rage, it bursts forth in sudden cruelty. When you deny your loneliness, it becomes cynicism. The unconscious will not be silenced by willpower. It will find its way. Better than to meet it directly with reverence, as you would a messenger bearing sacred words. Let me take you deeper. Consider the archetype of the child, which is always resurrected during holidays. Children become the center of ritual gifts for them, songs sung with them, traditions preserved through them. But behind the outer child is the inner child, the psychic figure who never grows old, who lives in you. Still, the holiday season is its stage. That is why you feel such strange contradictions, joy mixed with sadness, warmth mixed with envy. The inner child awakens, demanding attention, and that child is often burdened with the shadow you never faced. If, as a child, you felt unseen, then holidays will resurrect that wound. When others receive attention and you feel neglected once more, if you were forced to wear a mask of obedience, then the rituals will remind you of that suffocation, and resentment will stir. If you once dreamed of magic but found only disappointment, then even as an adult, you may feel bitterness beneath the tinsel and lights. These are not present disappointments alone. They are echoes of the past, demanding healing. What, then, is the path? Not repression, not indulgence. The path is recognition and integration. To recognize means to say, yes, I see you. You are the shadow I buried. You are the grief, the rage, the longing I could not allow myself to feel. I will not cast you away again. To integrate means to hold the tension, to allow shadow and light to coexist within you, to realize that wholeness is not purity, but complexity embraced. The alchemists knew this well. They spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, the stage of decay and darkness that precedes transformation. Holidays are, in truth, nigredo, disguised as festivity. Beneath a cheer lies the confrontation with darkness. But if you endure the blackness without fleeing, then comes the albedo, the whitening, the rebirth of light. Only then can you experience true joy. Not the shallow joy of social expectation, but the profound joy of integration. You see, my friends, the holiday is not merely a social ritual, it is an alchemical vessel. Into this vessel are poured all your unresolved conflicts, all your forgotten selves, and the fire of collective ritual heats the vessel until the shadow emerges. If you are unconscious, you experience only the chaos, but if you are conscious, you recognize the alchemy taking place. You realize that the resurrection of the shadow is the beginning of transformation. Perhaps you will ask, is it possible to prepare for this resurrection? Yes, you must enter the season with awareness. Pay attention to your dreams, for they are the voices of the unconscious, preparing you. Observe your moods without judgment, for they signal what lies beneath. Enter family gatherings not with naive expectation of harmony, but with the understanding that they are theaters of the archetype where the shadow will appear. When it appears, greet it as an actor playing its part in your psychic drama. Do not fight it. Do not worship it, but see it. And in seeing, you rob it of its destructive power. Understand also that the collective shadow resurrects alongside the personal one. Holidays stir ancient archetypes of tribe and exclusion, of generosity and greed. Notice how society itself swings between celebration and conflict, between warmth and division. The collective shadow is visible in the loneliness of those excluded, in the greed masked as generosity, in the exhaustion masked as joy. To see this is not to despair, but to realize that humanity itself undergoes the same alchemy as you. Thus, when the season arrives, do not ask only, how shall I celebrate? Ask also, what in me is being resurrected? And when the shadow speaks, do not silence it. Listen, for within its voice is the possibility of your individuation, your becoming whole. When you close your eyes at night in the holiday season, the psyche does not rest. It works with heightened intensity. For the unconscious, seizes this liminal time as a stage for its messages. Pay attention to the dreams that visit you now, for they are often thick with archetypal imagery. You may find yourself walking through snow-covered forests, or standing before a house filled with endless rooms, or meeting with long-dead relatives who speak in riddles. These are not accidents. The unconscious is selecting its symbols with precision. The forest is the unknown, the place of trial. The house is your psyche, with rooms representing forgotten aspects of the self. The ancestors are the bearers of wisdom and wounds, reminding you that your shadow is not only personal, but also ancestral. The holiday resurrects not only your own buried shadow, but also the shadow of your lineage. You carry within you the unfinished business of those who came before. Their traumas, their longings, their unresolved conflicts live on in your unconscious. The holidays, with their rituals of ancestry and memory, open the door for these ghosts to reappear. The anger you feel may not be entirely your own. It may be the echo of generations. The grief that dwells in you may be the grief of your ancestors, still seeking acknowledgement. The loneliness at the table may belong to the forgotten ones who never had a place. Do not underestimate this. To encounter the ancestral shadow is not to drown in despair, but to realize that individuation is not only a personal task, it is also a healing of the lineage. When you recognize what arises in you, you free not only yourself but those who came before. The shadow resurrected at holidays is therefore not an enemy but a sacred inheritance. It is the unfinished work handed to you, asking to be carried into consciousness at last. Think of how many traditions light candles during winter festivals. The flame is not only a symbol of warmth in the darkness, but also of remembrance. Each light is an invitation for the ancestors to draw near, each flicker a reminder that life continues through death. Psychologically, this act is an invocation of the unconscious. When you light a candle, you are signaling to your own depth, I am willing to see what is hidden. And the unconscious responds, often in ways you cannot predict. Dreams intensify, moods deepen, synchronicities multiply. Synchronicity is especially alive during these times. You may find that the very song you needed to hear plays in the background, or that an old photograph falls into your hands, or that a stranger's words pierce you like a message. Do not dismiss these as coincidences. They are the outer reflection of the inner drama. The shadow speaks not only in dreams, but also in the patterns of outer life. The more attentive you become, the more you will recognize that the world itself becomes a mirror during the holiday season. But let us be honest, most people resist this. They prefer the glittering distraction to the shadow's truth. They perform the rituals without awareness. They consume and exchange gifts without listening. They drown the unconscious in noise, and so the shadow, denied again, grows stronger, preparing to return with greater force next year. This is why the same conflicts repeat annually, why the same depressions resurface, why the same bitterness haunts the gatherings. Without integration, the cycle becomes endless. The path I offer you is more difficult, but also more real. To enter the holiday season consciously is to treat it as an initiation. It is to realize that the resurrection of the shadow is not an obstacle, but the very essence of the ritual. You are meant to meet the ghost, the ancestor, the child within the buried grief. You are meant to sit at the table not only with your family but also with your shadow. Only then can you transform. Individuation is not achieved by fleeing into light alone. It requires descent into the dark places of the soul. And holidays, with their archetypal potency, are natural moments of descent. That is why you feel the strange mix of joy and sorrow. You are descending into the unconscious, even as you pretend to celebrate. But if you accept the descent, if you allow yourself to feel, to see, to acknowledge, then you rise again with greater wholeness. Do not think this is a private journey only. Every person around you is undergoing the same psychic drama. That is why family gatherings so often explode in conflict. Each person brings their resurrected shadow to the table. One brings rage, another grief, another the need for control, another the hunger for approval. The table becomes a battlefield of shadows. But if even one person becomes conscious, the dynamic shifts. If you can recognize, this is my shadow speaking, or this is their shadow rising, then you no longer drown in the projection. You hold the awareness that transforms chaos into initiation. Projection is the great danger of the holiday shadow. You feel the bitterness rise, but instead of owning it, you hurl it at your brother, your mother, your partner. You accuse them of what belongs to you, and they do the same. Soon the table is filled with accusations, each person blind to their own shadow, each convinced the problem lies elsewhere. This is how wars begin, how families fracture. Projection is the weapon of the unconscious. The only antidote is recognition, to take back what you project, to say, this rage is mine, this grief is mine, this envy is mine. It is a humbling act, but it is a doorway to freedom. Consider again the archetype of resurrection. What is resurrected is not destroyed, but transformed. The God who dies and rises does not return unchanged. He returns as something greater, bearing the power of both death and life. So too must you. When the shadow resurrects, you are not to kill it, nor to let it rule you, but to integrate it, to become the one who holds both light and darkness. This is the meaning of psychological wholeness. If you ignore this, then holidays will continue to wound you. You will dread them, or numb yourself to them, or flee from them. But if you embrace the resurrection of the shadow, then holidays become sacred thresholds. They are no longer traps of nostalgia or performance, but gateways to deeper self-knowledge. You begin to see that every conflict is a mirror, every grief a doorway, every ghost a teacher. You understand that the unconscious is not against you, but for you, that its eruptions are not curses, but calls to awakening. The task is not simple. It requires courage to sit in the midst of festivity and admit, I feel sorrow, or I feel anger. It requires patience to listen to the inner child instead of silencing it. It requires humility to own the projections you cast on others. But if you take this path, you will discover that the resurrection of the shadow is not the end, but the beginning. From the darkness comes new life. From the child's cry comes the birth of the self. So I tell you, do not fear the holiday shadow. Expect it, welcome it, let it rise, let it speak, let it show you what you have ignored. This is not a season of superficial happiness. It is a season of deep psychic work. It is a time when the unconscious itself joins you at the table. The holiday is a mirror, and in that mirror you see not only your face, but the faces of all you have been and all you have denied. When you sit before the decorated tree or the glowing candles, you are also sitting before an altar of the psyche. Whether you recognize it or not, each ornament, each ritual, each song carries archetypal weight. The unconscious speaks in symbols, and the holidays are saturated with symbols. The tree is the axis mundi, the world axis connecting earth and heaven. The star is the promise of transcendence. The gift is the symbolic exchange of soul for soul, a reminder of what you hunger to give and to receive. And yet beneath each symbol lurks its shadow. The tree may remind you of connection, but it may also resurrect your sense of alienation. The star may inspire you, but it may also mock you with the unattainable. The gift may delight, but it may also reawaken wounds of unworthiness when what you longed for is not given. Thus, the holiday becomes a psychic crucible, heating both light and shadow until they merge. The uninitiated resist this alchemy, preferring to keep light separate from dark. But the one who listens to the unconscious knows that the crucible must hold both, or no transformation can occur. You may notice the peculiar melancholy that often accompanies the days after the holiday. When the lights are dimmed and the rituals end, a strange emptiness settles. This too is the shadow. It is the aftermath of resurrection, the awareness that the unconscious has stirred but not yet integrated. Many fall into depression at this time, believing they have failed to feel the joy they were supposed to. But the truth is that they have touched the depths, and the descent requires time for assimilation. To recognize this is to remove the burden of false expectation. You are not meant to feel only joy. You are meant to undergo transformation, and transformation is rarely painless. Consider also the archetype of rebirth, which shadows every holiday ritual. Birth does not occur without labor pains. Light does not emerge without night. Joy that excludes sorrow is counterfeit. The unconscious will not allow you such illusions. That is why the shadow resurrects to insist that your wholeness requires darkness as well as light. And yet, there is beauty in this. For when you dare to face the resurrected shadow, you discover compassion. The rage you feel toward your brother is also your own rage at being unseen. The grief you feel for the absent loved one is also your own longing for connection. The loneliness you feel in the crowd is also your recognition of the sacred solitude of the self. By entering these emotions consciously, you awaken a tenderness that is far deeper than superficial cheer. In this way, holidays can become sacred therapy. Not therapy in the clinical sense, but therapy in the oldest sense of the word, a healing through encounter with the gods of the psyche. The archetypes are gods in disguise, and during holidays they walk among you. The child, the mother, the father, the ancestor, the trickster for the savior. They all appear at the table. Each person in your family may embody one of them. Often, unconsciously, you may find yourself cast as the scapegoat, carrying the projections of others. You may find another playing the hero, striving to save everyone. Another may embody the tyrant, enforcing control. Another, the clown, distracting from pain with laughter. These are not mere personalities. They are archetypal masks through which the unconscious stages its drama. To recognize this is to free yourself from blind participation. When your uncle becomes cruel, you see that he is possessed by the tyrant archetype. When your sibling plays the victim, you see the archetype speaking through them. And you, too, are not exempt. You may realize you have been cast as the rebel or the martyr or the judge. This recognition allows you to step back and say, this is the drama of the unconscious. I need not be its puppet. You gain the power to respond rather than react, to see rather than project. This is the heart of individuation, to stand in the midst of archetypal drama without being swallowed by it, to hold the awareness that what is resurrecting is not only personal but universal. You are participating in a ritual older than you can imagine, a ritual of shadow and light, of death and rebirth. If you can see this, then even the conflicts at the holiday table become sacred. Let us speak of the child again. For the holiday is above all the season of the child archetype, the Christ child, the divine infant, the new year, the beginning again, all point to the archetypal truth that renewal is born small and fragile. But the child is also the shadow child within you. The one you abandoned when you grew up, it resurrects in longing, in tears, in anger. To ignore it is to deny the very possibility of rebirth. To embrace it is to rediscover your vitality, your creativity, your wonder. Ask yourself, what does the child in me want this season? Not the adult, not the ego, but the inner child. Perhaps it wants to be held, perhaps it wants to play, perhaps it wants to weep, perhaps it wants simply to be seen without judgment. If you can give this to yourself, you will find that the shadow child transforms from a ghost into a companion. It no longer sabotages you, but enriches you. And so I tell you, the resurrection of the shadow is not a curse, but a blessing in disguise. It is the unconscious demanding to be whole. It is the self calling you to individuation. It is the psyche's way of reminding you that life cannot be lived in fragments, that you must embrace all that you are. The greatest danger is to believe that holidays are only about external celebration. If you stop there, you will miss the inner work they demand. You will repeat the same wounds year after year, always wondering why joy eludes you. But if you accept that the holiday is also an inner ritual, then every conflict, every mood, every dream becomes meaningful. You begin to live not only outwardly but inwardly. This is the gift the unconscious offers you, not superficial happiness. A bit depth, not fleeting cheer, but transformation. Not escape from shadow, but the courage to walk with it. And when you accept this gift, you find that the holidays no longer drain you, but renew you. You discover a joy that is not dependent on circumstances, a peace that is not destroyed by conflict, a light that shines precisely because it has embraced darkness. So let the shadow resurrect this season. Let the ghosts come. Let the child cry. Let the archetypes play their drama. Do not flee. Do not numb. Stand in the center with awareness. For in that awareness lies your freedom. And in that freedom lies the birth of the self. And so we arrive at the culmination of this reflection, the holiday, not as distraction, not as superficial festivity, but as initiation into the mystery of your own wholeness. When the shadow resurrects, it is not to torment you, but to remind you that the self cannot be divided. The self is the union of opposites, the reconciliation of what you have feared and what you have desired. The holidays, by their very nature, set the stage for this confrontation. They summon archetypes, they stir ancestral memory, they awaken the child, and they force you to meet the ghosts you thought had been banished. If you resist this, you condemn yourself to endless repetition. Each year, you will feel the same heaviness, the same conflict, the same melancholy, without knowing why. You will decorate and sing and laugh. Yet underneath will be the same unspoken grief, the same rage, the same loneliness. But if you allow yourself to see, if you listen to the unconscious with reverence, then the resurrection of the shadow becomes not a curse but a blessing. It is the psyche's way of inviting you to take another step on the path of individuation. Individuation is not the attainment of perfection, but the acceptance of totality. To individuate is to hold the light and the dark together, to acknowledge the shadow without being consumed by it, to welcome the child without regressing into it, to honor the ancestors without being possessed by them. It is to realize that joy and sorrow, love and anger, belong and solitude are all part of the same tapestry. The holidays weave this tapestry more visibly than any other time, which is why they so often unsettle you. But if you accept the unsettling as initiation, then you begin to walk the path consciously rather than unconsciously. Imagine the holiday table as an alchemical vessel. Each person seated there is an ingredient, each emotion a substance, each memory a flame. The vessel heats, the contents bubble, the shadow rises. If you see only the chaos, you may despair. But if you see with alchemical eyes, you recognize that the transmutation is occurring. The conflicts are not meaningless. They are the friction necessary for transformation. The grief is not senseless. It is the gateway to compassion. The shadow is not an enemy. It is the dark stone that, once polished, reveals the gold hidden within. What is required is courage. Courage to admit that you feel what you feel, even when it does not match the surface expectation of joy. Courage to face the ghosts of your past without fleeing. Courage to look across the table at your brother, your mother, your partner, and see not only their persona but also the shadow they wrestle with. And courage, most of all, to recognize your own projections and take them back, for the holiday is a hall of mirrors, And each face you see reflects some part of yourself. When you take back your projections, when you own the rage and grief and envy as your own, you stop fighting phantoms. You stop blaming others for what belongs to you. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The shadow, once feared, becomes integrated. You feel a strange release, as though chains you did not know you carried fall away. You discover that the holiday does not need to be perfect, nor you, nor anyone else. You discover that wholeness, not perfection, is the true gift of the season. Do not think this is a small task. It is nothing less than the work of the soul, but it is also the work you are summoned to each year when the holidays return. The psyche, like the earth, moves in cycles. What was not resolved last year comes again this year, until at last you dare to face it. This is why the shadow resurrects, because the psyche does not abandon its work. It insists again and again until you are ready to listen. And what of the loneliness that so many feel during the holidays? It too is the shadow speaking. It is the recognition that no amount of outer festivity can fill the inner void. But loneliness is not a punishment, it is the call of the self. It is the reminder that you must turn inward, that your deepest belonging lies not in external approval, but in communion with your own soul. If you can sit with loneliness without numbing it, you will find that it transforms into solitude. And solitude is the ground of creativity and renewal. The holidays resurrect also the archetype of death, for in the midst of celebration you are reminded of those who are absent, those who have passed. Their chairs are empty, their voices silent. This is painful, but it is also sacred. It is the unconscious reminding you that life and death are intertwined. To grieve in the midst of festivity is not to fail, but to participate fully in the rhythm of existence. Your tears are as holy as your laughter. The holiday does not demand one without the other. It demands both. So let the resurrection of the shadow be your teacher. When grief rises, let it teach you compassion. When rage rises, let it teach you strength. When envy rises, let it teach you what you truly desire. When loneliness rises, let it teach you the path to inner communion. Ek shadow, if met consciously, becomes a guide. Ach ghost, if listened to, becomes a messenger. Ich haunting, if endured, becomes an initiation. This is the deeper meaning of the season, not the denial of darkness, but its embrace, not the escape from shadow, but its transformation. The self is born, like the divine child, only when the womb of shadow is honored. Light that denies its source in darkness is brittle and false, but light that emerges from darkness is indestructible. And so I bless you with this knowledge. The holidays will resurrect the shadow you buried. But this is not to destroy you. It is to make you whole. It is to awaken you to the fullness of your being. It is to lead you on the path of individuation, where you discover that the opposites are not enemies but partners in the dance of the soul. Do not flee. Do not numb. Stand in the center of the crucible with open eyes. Welcome the ghosts, the griefs, the conflicts, the child within. Welcome the archetypes as they play their drama. and know that you are not alone. Humanity has always walked this path, and the collective unconscious holds you as you walk it now. This is the warning and the blessing. Holidays resurrect the shadow you buried. If you meet it unconsciously, it will wound you again and again. But if you meet it consciously, it will heal you. And in that healing, you will discover a joy deeper than cheer, a peace stronger than conflict, a light born from darkness. This is the true gift of the season.